Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to answer more viewer questions in another segment of Ask Judy. If you enjoy these segments, please do hit like and subscribe. I also want to fill you in on a couple of upcoming events. The first one is the Cherry Blossom Festival on April 24th through 27th in Marshfield, Missouri. If you'd like information about this, you can go to cherryblossomfest.com. Although I will not be able to attend this year, I have attended in the past, and it is always a lovely weekend. But I did want to let you know that some members of the cast will be there, including Richard Thomas. He and Cammie Kotler and David Harper will be attending, and also David Doremus, who played G.W. Haynes, and Martha Nix, who played Serena Burton. So if you would like to attend that, there'll also be some other people that you might be familiar with from Little House on the Prairie. Dean Butler and Allison Arngrim will be there, along with Charlotte Stewart, who was in Little House as a school teacher and also did a couple of episodes of our show. She was in our first episode, The Foundling, as the little girl's mother. Also Stanley Livingston, who was Chip on My Three Sons. Jerry Mathers, who was the Beaver, and John Provost, who was Timmy in Lassie. So there'll be other people as well that you'll be familiar with. So go check that out, and if you can make it to Marshfield, you'll have a good time. This question is from Mike, who asked did I ever get to meet any A-list stars roaming around on the studio backlot in the early 70s filming The Waltons? Who were they? Did they appear approachable? Although I saw people around the lot at times, I didn't necessarily get to meet a lot of people. If there wasn't an opportunity to engage in a natural way, I didn't go running up to people. And sometimes I was frankly starstruck. We would go to the commissary sometimes, and I remember seeing some big stars there. The only one I remember off the top of my head, whose name I can remember, is Sally Fields. And I just remember seeing her and thinking, oh my goodness, she's so tiny. But there were certainly people that I would see around there. I got to go on to a set. I think it was All the President's Men was filming. A costumer who had worked on our show was working on that. And she, took me into the set. And across the way, Robert Redford was there, I think, talking through something with the director. And so it was just like, oh my goodness, there's Robert Redford. But I didn't actually get to meet him or even really be up close to him. Then I ran into Barbra Streisand when she was filming A Star is Born on the soundstage next to us. There was a bathroom that the two sound stages shared, and I happened to pass her. She was coming out, I was going in, to the bathroom. That was my full exchange, And George Clooney was a friend of Mary McDonough's, and he was working on ER, so he came over to visit her, and we were in the makeup room, so we got to chat with him for a few minutes. The Dukes of Hazzard cast, I knew most of them, and they often were filming on the back lot at the same time, so we would bump into each other, or they would drive their General Lee car through front yard of the Waltons, which was kind of fun. So sometimes they were people I had met other places, and then we happened to be working on the same lot, but those guys were all really nice and really liked them. Burt Reynolds, I think, came onto the set once or twice, and I got a chance to meet him. He was very kind to us. Elton John came on the set one time too. I guess he was a big fan of the show and wanted to meet Will and Richard, and he came into the schoolhouse and talked with all of us kids while we were at school, so that was a thrill. When I spoke with the Guardians, when I did that first segment there, they were talking about some of the stars that would come by our set to visit Will or Ellen because they'd worked with them, and so they would come in and go, where's Will or where's Ellen? And so they were talking about some of the people that came on the set or that they got to see. Sometimes we were in school or we were on set or something. So I didn't necessarily always see these people. I did see when we did a CBS special, there's this fabulous photo I have from that they did a photo shoot, but it was like all the big CBS stars, and I literally have that framed picture on my wall in my house because it's like a who's who, and that Lucille Ball was there. Did I meet her? No. George Burns was there. I mean, just amazing, amazing legends. Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, Lassie was even there. Alfred Hitchcock was there. Walter Cronkite was there. So that was just thrilling, just to stand there and look at these people that I was still young, that I grew up watching and was still watching and idolized. So I can be a total fangirl at times, but I try to kind of be cool about it. So a lot of times in those cases, I didn't want to be running around, bothering people when they were kind of working, but it was still a thrill to see them. Addie Jill asked this question. I'm specifically interested in the relationships between the older cast. For example, apart from the professional relationship between Mary Jackson and Helen Cleve, were they actually friends or did they just work together and that's where it ended? They seemed to be friends. Whether they did or how much they got together away from the set, I don't know. Because sometimes I would attend things that a lot of the cast and recurring characters and stuff were at. So, but that was still kind of a work thing. So there were times when people had parties and a lot of the cast were invited, but whether the two of them went out to lunch together, that would have been quite a thrill for somebody if they were someplace and Helen and Mary were having tea together. And it's like, oh my goodness, the Baldwin sisters are there. And then was Ellen Corby or Will Geer friends with them, or was it strictly a business relationship? I think they probably crossed paths and worked together on other shows, but sometimes you can be in the same project but not work together in scenes or work on the same days. So that makes a difference too. There's any number of people that, you go, oh wow, they were both in that film, but their scenes weren't together, so they may not have seen each other. And then were Helen and Mary as friendly in real life as they appeared to be in the series? Yes, they were absolutely adorable, so kind, so generous, so sweet, humorous, just very approachable, not as ditzy as the Baldwin sisters, very, very bright and intuitive, and just such talented actresses, so professional. They really did their homework. Did they interact with us? Yes, not in a grandmotherly way, just as friends, as people that we could sit and talk with, and I always enjoyed my interactions with them. This question is from Brenda Reese, who was talking about the story about the actress who played Mrs. Breckenridge, Andrea Marsden, and said, I especially liked Adrian's character, Mrs. Breckenridge. That lady had such polish and panache as an actress, very classy. Over the years, I've seen many guest actors who have appeared in other shows or movies. It is interesting to see them using their talents in other creative works. And I also think it's funny when actors are playing a role as regular people and make light of those who act for a living, as it may be a job that is either a waste of time or part of that so-called seamier side of life. I wonder if an actor feels silly delivering a line like that. I think we have fun with it usually, making light of what we do and the way it has been viewed over the years, like no actors or animals allowed, or it is interesting to me that there was not so long ago in history that it was a profession that was really looked down upon. So we've come a ways, I'd say. Not that actors, I necessarily feel, are always respected or considered bright or intelligent, and people, I know actors can be, attacked a bit sometimes if they voice their opinions, whether it's about politics or other subjects. Sometimes people seem to think that all we know is acting and that we're not very well educated or that we don't do our research. And, anytime someone says something that isn't well researched and they don't know their facts, then yes, but that can be true of anybody. How many people do you have conversations with who spout off things that you know are not factual? So I think that trying to stay away from the generalities, and I think a lot of actors are very well informed, and that their opinions are not just off the cuff, fluffy things. But then there are some where that is the case. But then, why do stage actors put down the movies? Because it just isn't theater. Judy, as an actor, what is that distinction for you? Well, it's interesting. I think it may have to do with an actor's background and training. Some people think that, oh, it's easy to act and there's nothing to it. And if you see some types of shows, particularly some reality shows where it's people are more personalities than trained professionals, then I can understand how people would think, oh, well, they're not really an actor. And indeed, they're not an actor, and they were hired not to be an actor. So, but I don't know. I think it's just personal preferences sometimes for people. I think there's value and incredible talent in both areas. I think it can take more discipline to do theater because you have to be able to carry a character every night, learn those lines as a whole. So it can be a lot more homework in that sense, your preparation, and then you have to be able to recreate that every night. Some people struggle not being able to remember lines, not getting it right the first time, not being able to deal with things going wrong. So you have a bit more latitude in film or television, but you also, the camera is so close to you that you have to be so believable that you can't overact. You have to be truthful and honest in a way that you can't always tell on stage in the same way. So that's, those are some of I think the two different sides of it for me. I respect both of them. I think there's tremendous actors in both arenas. As an actor, what is a distinction for you? Is it because a play has a live audience or what? Yeah, I mean, the pressure of performing in front of a live audience every night, but then there's shows that tape in front of a live audience. So I don't know. Is that different? Not really. I also wonder how Richard Thomas would respond. Don't know. He just happens to love doing theater. And I think sometimes actors enjoy theater because you go from beginning to end and the performances really belong to the actors. Once the curtain goes up, it's up to the actors to carry the show. There's no director going, no, stop, cut, do it differently. Or there's no editor who's going to go in, or whoever has the final cut on a film or television show. They can't take away some scene that you did. You did the scene. It was on the stage. The audience saw it. Whether you did a good performance, a bad performance, whether you tried something new, whether you took a chance. Whereas on film, and it can be as simple as, oh, we have too much time. We have to cut this episode down because it has to fit in this time frame to be on the air. So all of a sudden, some scene that was lovely might get cut simply because something had to go and that scene was less important to the whole story. So a lot of those factors can come into play in terms of the difference between the two. So I think actors sometimes feel they have more control of their performance on stage. So there you go. I hope that was a little bit helpful in terms of an answer to your question. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Ask Judy. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy, and more special guests. Thanks for watching.